Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV. Haven, Season 1, Episodes 10 and 11. Of course, I'm broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida, next to a tiny dwarf lake. I have with me tonight the other Central Florida resident belonging to the show, Professor Pixel. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Doing good, but we're actually reviewing episodes 11 and 12.
That's what I didn't say, and that's what I'm saying now. So going with it live, episode 11 and 12, Pixel, I have to say stand out from some of the episodes that we've seen before because to me, these are Haven episodes. You're getting, yes, a trouble of the week, but that's not the predominant theme. The theme is what's happening in Haven with the bigger picture. The characters that we've come to know that are kind of breaking off into groups. Things are kind of happening organically, and there's definitely a sense of building towards a big finish to me here. And in episode 11 here, we've got, but our boss has come back to basically pound on her ass to make her. That's not a bad, by the way. It wasn't meant to be. He's grilling her, and I'm going.
It's not that kind of show.
He's basically trying to. It's not that kind of show. I swear, it's not. It's not the adult version. It's basically, Audrey, what have you done? Why should you stay here in Haven? And then we find out later what he's really up to, because sometimes with Haven, we'll get a situation that when you think about it for a moment, you go, it just doesn't make sense. But it's probably got something to do with the trouble, so I can let it go. But here with his boss, it's about damn time he shut up to kind of explain stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why this episode kind of dealt for it. Because to me, the trouble in here and the poker playing and being on Duke's boat, to me, that was really took second, third fiddle and really was probably the weakest in terms of troubles. What do you think?
Oh yeah. No, I definitely agree. Out of all the, how do I say it, non-apparent troubles, this is the weakest thus far. And I honestly feel like the writers didn't really care about the trouble as much, which makes sense because this is truly about, it's time for Audrey to actually explain what the hell's going on, at least to her boss, because we haven't seen him in 8 episodes.
At least.
So, yeah, it's about time. And plus, we know something's going on with the boss. So we need to get more information on that, which we will get to later.
Well, so you mentioned that we know something's going on with the boss. How do we know this?
Well, in the first episode, at the end, whenever Audrey says, I need to stay here, he's like, okay, you can take your personal time. And hangs up, and then he makes a call and basically says, your package has arrived.
Yeah, it's something on a big conspiratorial level that we've completely glossed over, but that's exactly right. And that's why, to your point, we know something's going on, but now that we know that Audrey's the reincarnation of this person named Lucy from 1983, about 27 years ago, I believe it is, we've been finding in the past episode or two some people with some passing reference to her, including the brothers that run the Haven Herald, the Towns lady who was the coroner who passed away, whose daughter apparently is now a character in the show, even a mild one at that. But in this one here, you've got her playing poker with Duke and a couple guys who are just kicking his ass. And of course, it turns out his trouble is he's a slightly prescient person where he can kind of almost read a split second in the future, or he's just a very good cold reader, so to speak, kind of whatever, subconsciously, however you want to call it. But that's his trouble. And so, of course, poker is the ultimate way of bringing that out. But what stuck out to me is that you talk about Nathan's father, Chief Warnos, he's being nicer and he's getting a bit more airtime. And he's been shown to be competent, like we had in the previous episode with Audrey's birthday party. But in here, you see him almost sticking up for his son when Audrey's boss comes into town wanting to get him, and he's trying to go out to talk to his son. And you get this feeling like, uh-oh, something's going down, and you don't know what, because they obviously, to your point, know each other. And, of course, Nathan's completely in the dark, but there's a little bit of exposition about Nathan and how he had to deal with, his father and why they have this bridge between them a little bit where his father didn't want to trust him, telling him what the troubles were. It's the classic parental thing of saying, you knew enough that you needed to know at the time, and as you got older, I would tell you more, sort of thing. Whereas him as still acting like an angry little kid, saying, "Well, I should have known more at the time, and that's why I don't like you, Daddy." And it sounds kind of trivial, but it's actually a kind of a big deal considering he's got into trouble himself, and it appears something's going on here too, because there's a crack on the boat that reminds me of the crack in the at the end of the episode with the brothers that gets ignored. I'm like, well, what the hell? Why is that getting ignored? Something's going on with this town that people aren't talking about, but it seems like the chief's trying to hold on. So I've kind of talked everything around the actual plot of the episode too, because I don't even think it's that important. But as far as Nathan and Duke and all that, what comes to your mind as far as what you think is important in this episode?
I think one part that you mentioned, it's absolutely the interactions between the characters. That's the whole reason why people can watch this show. Because otherwise, no. On all sorts of levels, no. But the interaction between the characters is absolutely the reason to stick around. Because what you were talking about with Nathan and his dad, we see throughout a series of scenes as they're talking. Nathan's freaking out because I can't reach Audrey. Where the hell's Audrey? Because Audrey, while she's on the boat with her boss, she gets locked into a room. So as we see throughout these scenes, like you said, the father is competent. He knows what to do. There's a reason. He says the line in this episode, there's a reason why I'm chief.
Yes.
So throughout this, towards the final scene between the two, the father says, I'm trying to make an effort here because, son, one day I'm not going to be around.
I know. Could you be more blatant about it?
Yeah. Well, one day I'm not going to be around, and I want us to have a better relationship before that time comes. And Nathan says, pretty much, go screw yourself. Yeah. Essentially, that's what he says, and you feel kind of bad for the dad. And then we jump to Audrey and her boss, because throughout these past few episodes, it has been Audrey, while trying to find out some information about her mother. It's really just her going around town. She's figuring out troubles and stuff, but she's just making a life for herself there. So when the boss asks, why the hell do you still need to be here? This doesn't feel like you're actually doing work here. It feels like this is your life now. And throughout each thing where she's trying to explain why it's important, at the end, she's like, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if what you think about the town or about the job even, because this is my life. This is important to me, and I'm going to stick around. And she pretty much quits the FBI, which that feels kind of weird. I don't think you can just quit the FBI, but
well, it's one of those things where we see at the end of the episode that her boss and the chief are like, okay, but you got to figure out what the hell's going on. You got to keep a lid on this town here. You got to figure out what's wrong soon. So you're like, okay, there's definitely something bigger at play, because in this episode there was a reference. There was some Stephen King books, I think, when she was breaking her way out of Duke's cabin there on the boat when they were getting taken to this location by the bad dudes, as she figured a way out. But there isn't a reference in there about the other agent you trained, which, is kind of like a reference to, I don't know, the X-Files or something. But it's one of those things where I'm looking at this episode, I'm going, okay, everything's kind of convenient. You've got these bad guys that are wanting a package from Duke, and Duke claims he doesn't know where it is because he's like the transporter. There's certain rules, and part of it is you just don't want to know what's in the package. And the prescient guy, gets distracted because Audrey somehow with Duke, when she gets out of the boat, puts an earpiece in him and he starts, it's an excuse for him to get basically naked in his underwear and look all sexy for the, crowd that is interested in seeing him that way. And doing crazy stuff so they can capture him. I mean, it's really forgetful, but in terms of the episode visually, you're dealing with boats. They're out there on the water. You see them, it's during the day. It's not cold and freezing like you think of up there in Nova Scotia, where it's at. Excuse me. It's supposed to be in Maine, but we know it's filmed over there by Halifax, Nova Scotia. So it was kind of neat to see that episode and the next one deal exclusively with boats in the sea, because that's really very important to the history of any sort of fishing town or small town like that that's, island based and away from everybody. But yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty decent episode. I didn't really care for the trouble, but the trouble was second or third place. Didn't piss me off. And again, we see most of this episode where the main characters are with the B or C level characters too. The coroner's daughter's there with Duke, and for most part, Nathan's there with his father, which you don't get to see a lot, and then Audrey's kind of with her boss for a big chunk of this episode. So it's not a bad episode. It moves things forward here in episode 11, basically saying, okay, let's fill in some more meat and potatoes about what the hell is going on. So at the end we go, yeah, right here without her knowing it, because they know her character well enough, and so somehow the chief knows something about it, and that's what we're left with.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to just jump straight into the chief and the FBI their interaction just yet, but you're absolutely right. Because this episode really doesn't have any need of special effects, it is, you're right, visually it's not terrible because they don't have to do anything special. There is no giant ball rolling down with a butterfly in front of it.
Well, that got my attention when that happened, so I actually kind of liked that. That's when my interest started taking off in the show, believe it or not. I know it sounds strange, but the fact that it was different is neat, because a lot of these Trouble of the Week episodes have been, okay, there's a dead person or something really horrific happened, and it just seems like, any cop show where, okay, there's a crime, there's a dead body, let's investigate, and it's the same setup, and there's no real difference to it, no real flavor. And here it kind of has been. So in episode 12, what's happening is you see this guy rowing up to this shore, and there's this old boat that, it's not a very big boat, an old fishing boat, looks like, I guess, a wooden one. So I guess, I don't know, I'm not a fishing expert, so I wouldn't know, but it's not a fiberglass recent type of boat, but it looks like a small fishing vessel. And this guy finds into some fishing stuff. He finds like a rosary, a cross on a necklace, and with some skulls and this and that. So of course some people have died, and there's this Garrick family that's got something going on, and it's like, whatever. But there's kind of actually what hasn't happened too much in this episode before, a carryover where Duke is speaking some basic Japanese on a phone, setting up a meeting with a dude for the package that appears to be the same one that he kept off the side of his boat before. And the purpose of that is to have him and Nathan kind of actually buddy up in this episode to some person. And it's kind of lame. Nothing really happens. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you have people being set up differently in this episode, just like last episode. But also you've got more people with the history of the town and some historical things going up that are prevalent. And in here, you've got, like I say, a missing boat, somebody's wife's kind of got a lot of bad stuff being talked about her. So it's the classic, oh, they're a bad family sort of see, but they're really not. And then her husband's been missing, presumed dead. And of course he's really not, because he's troubled. But it's, again, another episode where you don't really care about what the trouble is and what's going on with it. It really is about all that stuff. So to me, it's exactly the same episode. What did you initially think?
I don't know if I can say it's exactly the same episode, because whereas the last episode really focused on the characters, period, this episode actually does focus upon the family element more, because the family's got a trouble, mostly apparent in the son, or so it seems. until we find out that basically the missing fisherman, who has been gone for years, is actually still around. His trouble is basically that he can't stay in one place.
Yes.
It's maybe it's supposed to be an allegory for ADHD. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, again, you go, okay, single mom with two pseudo teenage kids, the teenage daughter who is kind of cute looking, has her dopey boyfriend over who's like, yeah, it's because I love you. And then, of course, something bad happens telepathically, it looks like. And then, of course, we all know, it's never the initial person with the trouble. It's going to be the young kid, and it turns out not to be him. And that's where they try to swerve you a little bit. The father the father of the Garrick clan, let's call it, that was supposed to have been on this boat. It turns out that all your atoms and molecules are in your body are moving. So you could say, well, why don't they just fly off into space? Well, they stay around, the nucleus of their atom, and so you have a vibration. And so everything has a fundamental vibration if you look at it in terms of waves, if you're getting all scientific. But for him, his natural frequency that he vibrates at is all messed up. So it's like he's not there. It's almost like he's incorporeal. But there's a scene in here where Audrey's in the office looking for clues to figure out what's going on because they suspected foul play on the boat with corroded parts. She accidentally kind of bumps into him. It's like she's hugging a ghost or the invisible man, so to speak. But somehow she's able to kind of slow him down enough for them to kind of communicate briefly. And he explains this. In doing so, he thinks that she's Lucy because he knew Lucy, I guess, when he was younger, kind of like how Duke did when he was a kid. So this was kind of interesting because he'll show up at the end of the episode here again there too a little bit. But I didn't mind this, and I think you're right, whether it's an allegory for ADHD or troubled family and how it affects you. I liked how Haven picked out a family to do this with, not just a bad dude escaping from prison or somebody turning on a werewolf or something like it. It's just your average family. The mom works at the Grey Gull as a hostess there. She cleans stuff and everything. So she's a part of the town. They put forth the effort to make her look relevant to it. So I kind of like that. So up to this point here, once they're figuring out what's going on, what are you thinking about the episode?
At this point, whenever you have a starting scene like that, where everything's flying around and woman ends up getting, she doesn't turn out too well. Visually, it's not good. This is again one of those episodes where you've got, oh look, it's those things flying around. Ah, no. It's cartoonish almost, and they do handle it seriously. I actually do like this trouble though. In comparison to the last episode, this one is actually a trouble, and it actually has a purpose in their lives. It actually impacts them in a way that we can kind of connect to, I suppose.
Yeah. How does the trouble affect the average person? It's like we say about superheroes. Yeah, they're cool and neat, but we can't really emphasize with them because they've got supernatural powers. Of course, they're going to be egotistical, but here it's you got a father who's incapable of helping his family out, but he's there present. At the end here, Audrey's and the family are in the office, and she explains what's going on, and they're all watching, and she's able to kind of slow him down for a little bit. And he basically tells him, hey, look, this is taking everything out of me. This is the last time I'll be able to see you. Oh, whenever you hear this bell ring, this captain's bell that he has, kind of like a cancer bell, you get one like for a ship. He goes, you'll know that I'm here and I'm thinking of you, sort of stuff, but no, I've never left. So there's the whole romantic notion of I've never left you. I'll always be here with you, even though I'm not here anymore. I mean, it's cheesy. It's kind of whatever. And of course, he thinks that Audrey's Lucy, and he says, "Oh, well, when she helped me out when I was younger, she had, got her foot cut on some glass really, really deep, and that's it." But he says, "Yeah, I think it's you." And it's like, yeah, okay, I don't know how this is supposed to be relevant other than another person affirming that, hey, you're Lucy. Well, damn it, you look just like her. And she's going, well, I think I'm her daughter. Because nobody in the present seems to be wanting to help her. It's anybody that's basically going to die or have some sort of trouble that they're not going to be around anymore. That gives her real info. But then the subplot here of Duke and Nathan at the Great Goal, where Duke's going to give Nathan some info if he helps Duke worm his way out of a situation with these people that he set up this appointment with, and it's a pull one over on one, and so Duke pretends he's the FBI agent, and then Nathan's there, and of course it's some hot middle-aged woman that comes in there that was like, whoa, is she going to be a major part of the show? No, they just brought in a hot middle-aged looking woman to come in here and do it, and nothing becomes of it, it appears. So it's like, yeah, this is just written for them to bomb, because they tell a story about how when they're young in school, and they make the story of how when Nathan was young, he had tacks put in his back, and Duke basically had pat him on the back saying, hey, this chick likes you, you need to go talk to her. And he does, and the girl screams because she saw the blood in his back. So it's kind of horrific. It's a play on stupid stuff when you're razzing your friends when you're younger. But I've got to ask this, because I haven't brought it up at all this entire season one when we talk about Nathan. I'm just going to ask you straight. Do you think he's a virgin? He's 35 years old. He said he couldn't feel pain, but they expanded on it later, and we've kind of confirmed that he can't feel. Here's a story illustrating his fear of socializing with women, how he has a tough time with it. We saw him having a tough time with the lady that left that was in a few episodes before. We know he can feel Audrey.
Didn't they actually sleep together, though?
I don't recall.
I think they did. I think she had that whole "look at me" moment, and so it
might have been alluded to, but
I don't think he was a virgin before.
Okay.
But I don't think he's a virgin anymore. In either case, but I'm trying to remember the episode, because I don't think it's either of these. But he actually. But I actually want to bring up a point, because we didn't bring it up before, that he talks about how Audrey is there. He actually feels Audrey whenever she touches him, he feels that, and they talk about destiny and stuff. But at this point, he's kind of lightened up on that. He's not talking about destiny. He's just kind of settled back to sidekick position, I feel.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the last episode coming up, that will change, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, because the Garrick husband, who comes to basically says, well, how can you do this? She's like, I don't know, because, or the wife, I think, asks him, yeah, hey, how can you do what you're doing with my husband as far as like slowing him down and making him president? She's like, well, I really don't know. So does this mean Audrey's troubled?
Here's the thing. Out of all the cases which have put Audrey as a victim of a trouble, of somebody else's trouble, I mean, she always reacts differently. We had the chameleon 2 episodes ago. The chameleon always killed its victims before taking their body. However, the chameleon with Audrey did not kill her when taking her form.
Right.
So she was still alive. And even the chameleon makes a note of that. So whenever there is a trouble, Audrey does not react like a normal person does. They aren't a true victim to whatever's happening to them. So that right now we're talking about how she's able to pull the man basically back into reality, into his physical form. And so again, not every person can do this. Only Audrey can. It's another reaction to a trouble that nobody else can do. So it leads us to believe that I don't think she's troubled herself, but she is the opposite to the trouble.
Yeah, it's like she's the trouble neutralizer or something, or there's something about her, whether it's a trouble that no trouble's going to affect her. I don't know how to explain it. We obviously, I think she's human, but we assume that anybody that has trouble is human as well, because that's not really fleshed out. Like I say, it's just a historical thing where we see this is going back quite some time. So, like I say, these 2 episodes to me were very similar in that regard, but other than they confirmed, okay, you're supposed to be his person, Lucy, if the hint's not there. And yes, somehow troubles don't really trouble her, no pun intended. And of course, there's a major plot about her being forced to stay in that town, and somehow between the FBI and Chief Warnos, they all are aware of it, so they're trying to keep Audrey there for reasons. So I think it's safe to assume that they feel it's important for her to be there. If nothing more than she's got good instincts, that she's drawn to the place, and so now she's emotionally invested in the town and the people there, that's going to happen. And you see it too, because that's all she wants to do is work and find out her history. Even though once in the blue moon she'll go out for drinks with Duke or Nathan, she doesn't really honestly seem sexually drawn to either one of them hardcore. Although of course, romantically speaking, it seems like it's really more about Nathan and her, or at least that's how it's presented, or we as watchers think of it. But the only thing that really, happens in the rest of this episode for the most part is at the end of the episode, she's got the picture of the Colorado kid of herself, or whatever in that picture. She goes down to the place where it was taken, and she sits there, takes her shoe off, and she's got this huge gash on the bottom of her foot. So she's like, wow, the guy said that Lucy got a big gash on her foot. I've got a gash on my foot. I must be Lucy, of course, is what we're all thinking. And that's how the episode ends. So overall, I think the episodes were solid. They feel like Haven episodes. They don't feel like a trouble of the week sort of something like we had for a few here and there with some minor character arcs. So we've got one more episode to do, episode 13, and we're going to recap season 1 of Haven. But overall, I think they're good episodes. I think they're a bit more serious than some of the other ones, even though the troubled stuff is not front and center. But to your point and what we said before, the interaction with the characters and how they're split apart really drive the show and make it better, and that's what we care about. So I've been satisfied with that, and I don't really have anything too negative to say for these 2 episodes. They're definitely worthwhile, better than some of the ones we've seen before. I wouldn't say they're the best, but they're intriguing enough, and I feel like they're building towards something big. What are your final thoughts?
I mean, I've talked about how I'm not a big fan of the show. It kind of tires me. But there are good elements. And I said from the beginning, I will always tip my hat whenever there's a moment that is solid. At the end, there's enough intrigue to actually make somebody want to sit down and figure out what the hell is going on. But and these episodes and these moments at the end really encapsulate the reason why people stick around, why they can take it, because there's something deeper to every single thing that they do.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And to me, the way this is presented on Sci-Fi when it came out to me, it's Stephen King, it's supernatural, it's got everything you want out of Stephen King, it's got mystery, it's got horror, it's got intrigue. And I don't look at it that way. I look at it as an adult soap opera, basically. And I'm not going to compare it necessarily to Dark Shadows, but Dark Shadows ran for so long, and it was just a gothic sort of adult thing. It's like, Dallas or Dynasty or any of these great dramas, no matter what the setting is. And to me, this is just that. I don't even consider this that supernatural show. It has a slight one to it, but I agree with you. It's not an action show. It's not, car chases like TJ Hooker or some other cop show. It's not, honestly, a horror show at all. If anything, it's like, I don't know, like a failed romance or something like that, because it doesn't have a happy vibe to it. It almost has like a sad kind of thing to it. So I just look at it as a drama. I mean, I don't know how you look at it, but it's clear to me that if you look at it in that lens, that's what the show is.
It's a mystery drama, absolutely. Because each week oh, what's happening here? It's just they're trying to figure out the trouble. That's the mystery. And then we have, like I said, the moments that are bigger picture stuff. Again, another mystery. And then the interactions between each other, which is drama. So yeah, mystery drama. Absolutely. If you Google it, I'm sure those two categories come up.
Well, we've got a lot of loose ends to tie up in the next episode of this when we do the final episode, episode 13, and just kind of do a quick review of the entire season overall, what we liked, what we didn't like, or some things that really stood out about it, why the people that listen to this Xtreme TV like it and all that too. Because I will say this, I understand you're not that fond of the show. I like it. For some reason, there's a certain rewatchability factor to it that's sinking its teeth into me. And from what I can see on my Twitter feed and people that are really interested in Haven, it's like the exact same thing. This is a show that they can rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. And I think about 4 or 5 episodes in, I started catching here on my second rewatch a lot of little things that I completely missed. And I don't mean a Stephen King book or a comment placed here that's a callback, a reference. That's cute. That's nice. But just something else about it. And the show is beautiful to watch. But we'll talk more about the pluses and minuses and if it's worth a season 2 Xtreme TV treatment later next year on this too. So any final thoughts?
I think I've had my final thought. So.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to Xtreme TV. Right now, season 1 Sundays as we're doing Haven. We're going to be finishing up next week on that. I'm your host, Rob. For RDV, who's not here tonight, for Professor Pix, everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, thanks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. See you next week. And as always, stay extreme. Good night.